Okay. That is my note cards. There's my outline. And over the past few years, there have been many mass shootings that we have heard of. Columbine, Newtown, Aurora, Colorado, and the movie theater, and many others that we haven't quite heard of over the news, but it is still a problem. So my plan is that the federal government can make a law on gun control and the state representatives can decide from there. And so my proposition is that the state legislators should make guns harder to receive. My first point is that the guns are much too violent for most people. And believe it or not, it is the leading cause of homicides in the U.S. today. As said by David DeGrazy on March of 2014, the case for moderate gun control. First, having a gun at home makes household members more likely to die by suicide. Second, the risk of death by homicide is much greater in homes with guns than in gun-free homes. Third, domestic violence is much more likely to prove lethal if guns are present in the home. And fourth, the risk of accidental death increases markedly in the household with guns. So overall, if you have a gun-free home, it is more likely that you can get hurt, or if you lock up those guns correctly, you shouldn't have the problem and you should feel safe in your own household. And many will argue that I want to be safe, I want to protect myself, I need a gun to be safe. Well, not necessarily. There are other types of protection that you can use, such as martial arts, knives, stun guns, whistles, anything like that, or call the police even first. And many will say that who have been in the situations where a loved one has been killed by a gun. As said by Evie in June of 2014 in economics.com, in quotes of Mr. Martinez where his son was killed, I have friends who are in the NRA. I grew up on a farm. I hunted. I killed animals. But assault rifles and semi-automatic weapons, there is no need for those except war. And he is correct. Semi-automatic weapons have been a problem in the U.S. lately, and in all reality, we don't need them for war. They were created for war, not to carry around on the streets or be sold to anyone else. And many will also argue that it's people who kill people. But in all reality, the people who kill other people need a weapon to make that happen. As said by Charles W. Collier in The Death of Gun Control, an American Tragedy in autumn of 2014, it is going to be ever so much harder to cure the world's depressed terrorists than take away their guns. And anyway, the problem is not depressed terrorists per se, the problem is depressed terrorists plus guns. So in all reality, those guns are the ones killing the people. Yes, it's the people who kill other people, but they need something to push them. And that goes into my next point, where guns are much too easy to get for those certain people. And the biggest situation that we have seen with people with guns are the mentally ill. And that is the biggest problem right now, is the mentally ill getting hold of guns, as said by Charles W. Collier also in 2014. In the course of any given year, some 26% of the adult population of the U.S. the criteria for suffering from at least one mental disorder. With civilian gun ownership at around 47%, this means that well over 10% of the population suffers from a mental disorder and owns a firearm, which works out something in the order of 30 million people. So 30 million people with mental disorders are owning a gun today in the United States. And I'm sure a lot of people don't feel safe that way. Also, it's not just the mentally ill that are getting hold of these guns, it's the younger people in the cities that get a hold of these guns and use it to protect themselves, or people in high schools that are getting hurt. As said by Newsbatch in February 2013 in gun control policy issues, under federal law, minors under 18 are prohibited from possessing guns, and minors under 21 are prohibited from purchasing guns from dealers. However, Unless regulated by state law, minors 18 and over are able to freely purchase weapons through private sales. So some of these people that are just getting out of high school into college can freely get guns wherever they want, whenever they want, from whoever they want. And that's not really safe. And the people who are providing those guns have gotten them much too easy. They haven't gotten a background check. No one knows who they are. They just get these guns and sell them everywhere. And that leads into my proposition again. The state legislators should make it harder to receive firearms. Although this has been a problem over the past few years, as said by EB in Lies, Damn Lies, Statistics in June of 2014, though many legislators were reluctant to introduce new restrictions, most seem to recognize the merits of tightening the ones that already exist, such as more thorough background checks for gun buyers with better screening for those with mental illness. Within a year, the push for reform went slack. The National Rifle Association drew fire, politicians cowered, and many American soldiers on, chastened, delusioned, and resigned. So we had dealt with this problem before, but they kind of just pushed it aside because they didn't want to do much about it. And so my thought on this is that what we could do is have harder background checks on all these people trying to buy guns. Then once they buy the gun, we should see if they can even handle it, like put them in a shooting range and see if they know how to handle the gun first and train them then. And then those gun owners, after so many months or so, can be checked in by certain inspectors hired by the government to make sure that they're locking it correctly, make sure they're keeping it safe, make sure they're keeping it away from children or mentally ill people, and so on and so forth. And throughout all of these research and all these jobs and everything, research on the mentally ill, research on video games with violence and guns, and getting it more stabilized, according to Jim Switch in January 2013 in weeklystandard.com, the proposal contains a mix of executive actions, regulations, and calls for Congress to act legislatively. The total package will cost at least $4.5 billion in new spending. Yes, that is a lot of money, but it will also, but with taxpayers' money and saving up for all of the spending, yes, it's going to take time, but we can make it happen throughout the course of a few years. And so overall, my main points on guns is that they're too violent, they're too easy to get, and the state legislators should make it harder for people to receive these guns. Again, my note cards.